Welcome to the She Found Motherhood podcast. Today we are talking about the realities of new parenthood. We often do a ton of time preparing for labor and delivery, but we often don't really know what to expect in that transition to becoming a new family. There's a lot of hormonal changes and relationship changes. It can just be stressful. So Dr. Pipp is joining us today to discuss a little bit about the work that she loves to do and how we can actually do a better job of preparing new parents for this time. Now, one of the biggest shocks is the lack of sleep you get for those little newborns. So we've put together a Newborn Sleep 101 course that you can take so you know exactly what to expect from a newborn and you can prepare yourself accordingly. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out on our website at www.shefoundhealth.ca. Let's get into it right after this.
Welcome to the She Found Motherhood podcast. We are doctors Sarah and Alicia, maternity physicians and moms who have been through it all. We want to empower you with knowledge so you can have the best pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience you can.
She Found Health and She Found Motherhood is meant for general medical information only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. This information does not apply to every situation. If you have questions or if you've received different advice, please contact your healthcare provider. Always seek the advice of your physician or another qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The views expressed by She Found Health and She Found Motherhood and our guests are not representative of any of the institutions with which we are affiliated. Some of our podcast episodes are sponsored so that we can keep getting great info out there to you, our listeners. We only partner with companies that we truly believe in. Some of our links and suggestions may be affiliates, and we would appreciate you using them to help fund this important work. Now let's get to it.
Hello, Dr. Pipp. We are here to chat about the reality of motherhood because it often comes as a shock to first-time parents. What is actually going on? We prepare so much for birth, but we often don't really kind of think about what comes afterwards. So you and I are going to have a chat today around that.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Alicia, for having me. I'm super excited to chat about this topic. It's one of my passions and interests. So maybe I'll start just by introducing myself and kind of where I come from. So yeah, I'm Dr. Pipp or Philippa Houghton. I am a family doctor on the north end of Vancouver Island here in BC. I did my medical school in Australia, and then I did my residency training here on Vancouver Island in Campbell River through UBC. I have a particular interest in perinatal mental health after supporting a close friend through her postpartum depression. And through studying about postpartum anxiety and depression and going through my own motherhood journey, I became quite interested in just sort of the normal hard stuff that comes along with new motherhood and new parenthood, and supporting women through that. And really focusing on, in medicine, we often use the term anticipatory guidance. So preparing women and their families for that big life-changing transition that is becoming a new mama or a new family.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you did an amazing podcast. It's actually one of our most popular podcasts with Dr. Sarah around kind of anxiety and pregnancy and postpartum. And so if anybody has not listened to that, go back and listen to it. It is incredible. But why don't we get started? So what did you want to talk about kind of first?
So I think the main thing I wanted to focus on was that I would love for all moms, and I think just to take a sidestep, it's important to note that when I say mom or mother, I'm referring to the primary caregiver of a newborn infant who views themselves in the maternal role. So this may be a birth mom, and that comes with physical changes that they have to adapt to as well. But this may be an adoptive mom. This may be someone who identifies as male or female. It might be a grandma, stepmom. So I'm going to use the word mother, but just know that that's an inclusive word for anyone who views themselves in a primarily maternal role. And, regardless of who you are, that transition into motherhood, or we sometimes use the word matrescence, is hard. It's really joyful. There's lots of positive moments. There's so much love, but there's lots of hard moments and challenging emotions that I don't think we talk about enough. And my concern is that in not talking about hard things, there are some people who sit at home alone in isolation thinking that they're alone and it's just them.
100%. It's I always say day 5 is the worst. I remember day 5 to day 7 being such a challenge. Breastfeeding with my first was not going well. I was bleeding. I was sore. It was just not what I had anticipated. And I'm a doctor, right? I should have known these things.
Exactly.
And I walked out to my husband at midnight and I said, go get some bottles. I can't do this anymore. My nipples were ravaged. It was so hard. I was bawling and it got better. But it's just one of those things, the emotions and everything kind of comes together. And you're 100% right. We don't talk about that. And there's some amazing joyfulness with it, but there's some huge challenges, which a lot of us aren't prepared for, even if we're used to doing kind of tough things.
Yeah, exactly. And day 5 is just exactly on point. And, with my first baby, I was so lucky. My family doctor, the day we were being discharged, she walked in and she said, somewhere between day 3 and day 5, it's going to get a bit crazy. You're going to probably have some weird thoughts. Your breasts are going to get really big. You're probably going to cry over lots of things, and they're going to be probably really minor. Your tea might be too cold and you might start crying. That's fine. It will get better. And bless her for saying that to me. Because when it happened, my husband and I said, oh yeah, yep, nope, she said this was coming. She said it would pass in about 48 hours. We just have to ride it out and it will be fine. And I want to be that person in every new mother and every new couple's life, is to say, oh no, Dr. Houghton said that this was coming and it's okay. It will get better. Just ride it out. So, that you're right. Exactly on point. Day 5 is where it really, really peaks for a lot of new moms.
And it got better, right? It got better.
Yeah.
We got some help with the breastfeeding. My perineum stopped being so sore. The emotions got better, right? And we've certainly done a podcast around baby blues and postpartum depression with one of our perinatal psychiatrists. So often, knowing what the difference is there is really important. But it gets better. But it's not all sunshine and roses, and it doesn't come.
Mm-hmm.
Even though our bodies are made for it, it doesn't necessarily just naturally come. Or easily come, I guess, right? It takes work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just the important thing for people to understand, is that this may be an overarching, joyful and positive experience for you welcoming this baby into your family. Most of the time this baby has been thought of for a long time. You've planned for it. You've thought of names. You've planned your nursery. You've created your birth plan. So it's very happy, but a lot of women are surprised to find themselves experiencing negative emotions too with a welcoming of their new baby. And that can create a lot of guilt. And you've listened to anything by Brene Brown, guilt and shame are so closely correlated. And shame is something that can really make us sit in isolation and feel very lonely, and can lead to more serious issues like mental health conditions. And, I worry that shame in a new mother can be a fast track to postpartum anxiety and depression. So I think it's important that women understand it's normal. It's very common to have negative emotions. And just some examples that I've heard, I'm sure you've heard as well in the privacy of your exam rooms at your office, is, I've had moms say, I was really expecting to feel bonded to this baby, and here I am a week out and I know I love him, but I don't feel this bond. I don't feel a maternal instinct. There must be something wrong with me. Or, if I'm being honest, I really don't like this motherhood thing. I love my baby, but the work of motherhood is really hard and I don't like it. There must be something wrong with me. And, those are whispered to family doctors behind closed doors, and quite often not whispered amongst mom groups. No one talks about it at mom and baby yoga. And I think probably most of the moms at mom and baby yoga have had these thoughts and are sitting there wondering, why does everyone else seem to enjoy this? Why does everyone else seem to have their stuff together? And I'm not feeling bonded, and I'm feeling frustrated that my baby won't nap on a schedule. And, those things most of the time are just normal transitional emotions. Sometimes they can be a red flag for a mental health condition. I think that's probably been covered in your previous podcasts. But, we all have negative and positive emotions in the same moment. That's normal. No one is happy or joyful 24/7. I would be concerned if someone was happy 24/7, actually.
It's funny, when I was pregnant with my husband found this website. I think it was babble.com or something. And he was looking at the emotions pre-children, and they're pretty steady, right? So if you take a graph, they're pretty much steady. Occasionally get a happy blip, occasionally get a bummer blip, but they're pretty steady. And then post parenting, they're the highest highs and the lowest lows. And they all average out about the same, but you just have these huge highs and these huge lows. And again, that's totally normal. once you have this small human being and as they're growing up. Another thing I remember, and I think the part of the issue is we're supposed to be in communities. We're supposed to be, in multi-generational homes and helping each other out and having your sisters and your aunties and your mother and your, next cave neighbor kind of helping you out and all being a part of a community. And we don't do that anymore. So I think we lose a lot of that kind of normalization of a lot of these processes and extra support around that. And COVID has not helped that out at all.
Oh, yeah, no, not I mean, there is a reason why postpartum depression and anxiety has escalated since COVID started. But I think those are important points you bring up too. I worry about millennial moms, myself being in that category as well. So the millennial mom is anyone born between 1981 and 1996. Millennials have been raised in a societal narrative that has done them a lot of favors, but some of them have not done mothers favors as they have journeyed into motherhood. Some of the things I worry about is as women have been raised in this social construct to embrace girl power, independence, chasing a career, being financially autonomous, and all these things that are great and so important and really relevant to the career and the workplace, it has unfortunately created a bit of a self-protective bubble that all these women have around themselves where they think, I have to do it all by myself. I have to do it all perfectly. And I can't ask for help. I can't lean on anyone because all along I've been told I have to be independent and powerful and a boss lady. And motherhood is not the time to be independent or a boss lady. Motherhood is the time where we need to really lean on our people and find our village. And like you said, we are more geographically displaced from our maternal predecessors than ever before. We used to have our moms around the corner and grandma down the street, and now mom's on the other side of the world, and we just don't have that next door neighbor, circumstance with our families where they can support us through these hard things and normalize them.
So true.
I think it's millennials get a lot of flack, but I think this is a hard transition for a lot of women whose identity has been really tied to their career and their hobbies and their education and their achievement and their productivity. And then you get thrown into new motherhood and there is no achievement. There's no productivity. It's just you and your baby, and it should be. It should just be you and your baby and the rest of your family nesting and gathering and feeling cozy and getting to know each other. But that can feel really uncomfortable when you've spent the last 10 years trying to break the glass ceiling.
Yeah, it's so true. So true. And social media does not help it. Mm-mm. Social media presents this unattainable goal of perfection. And I think it's getting better, but I often say to new parents, don't go on social media for like the first year of your life. I mean, it's hard now because that's where all the support is, but I feel like people, especially those who are used to being productive in the workforce, one way or the other, feel that they need to be productive in their role as a parent. And so they pick one thing that they're really good at, and then they start posting about it or blogging about it. They ignore the rest of the stuff that's not going well, the mess on the floor, or the toddler who's screaming because they're making their baby food from scratch and doing baby-led weaning. And that's all they present. And then you see this example of that and you just feel so inadequate because you're not living up to what that person is doing. But behind that one thing that they're really good at, everything else is probably a disaster, just like everybody else's life. Yeah, but there's no kind of presentation of that, right? And so I see these new parents or these, people on maternity leave coming in and they're just feeling lost in that because they don't have that feeling of success or achievement or whatever it is, because parenting is the long game. Yeah. You get your success when they're a productive member of society. As I say, my children hopefully will not be in jail by the time they're 20. That's my goal for them. Productive member of society. Yeah. That's the long game, but it takes a long time to get there, right? Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's not even just comparing to perfection and ideals on social media. Sometimes it's just comparing to your own expectations and ideals, going through your pregnancy and imagining what postpartum will be like. I, myself included, was very guilty of imagining walking around town with my little newborn in his car seat, going to all the cafes. This is pre-COVID, of course, getting coffees with my friends, going out, to the brewery, lots of beer sampling, all that stuff with my baby while on maternity leave. None of that happened because it's a full-time job looking after a newborn. And that's one of those things that can be a big slap in the face. You might picture this, this maternity leave with all these adventures, hiking with the baby in the backpack and all kinds of things you see, online or from friends. And you may have this whole set of goals lined up for yourself and find that those goals don't come to fruition. So I think in planning your postpartum, imagining what it's going to be like, I think just setting the bar really low and having very few expectations, especially in the first 6 weeks. Just expect to rest and be with your baby. And if you get to a coffee shop once, great, pat on the back, but don't set the bar too high.
Yeah. And that's really important if you're hoping to breastfeed as well, right? A lot of that skin to skin bonding time, frequent feedings, just hanging out in bed for the first week or two, really, to really kind of help establish that milk supply is so important. And if you're not starting to breastfeed, then still it just, I think we often forget, and that term matrescence is so great, but the fourth trimester I really like as well, because, for you and your baby, it's a huge transition from baby being on the inside to baby being on the outside for both of you. And it takes time to transition to kind of two independent-ish souls, like a good 3 months. And so that expectation.
Mine's 6 months, and I'm still feeling like I koala babied onto me all the time.
Right. Mine was koala babied onto my husband because I had to go back to work at 4 months. But still, there's they need that thermoregulation and they need that skin to skin time and they need that snuggle time. And you cannot spoil a baby before in the first 3 months. You just need to be there to support them and have people there to support you, right?
Hey Sarah, do you remember all of those questions you had as a new mom? What car seat should I buy? How do I start solids with my baby? Do I cloth diaper or use disposables? How do I care for my newborn skin? What kind of birth control should I use postpartum?
I sure do. I know for me, one of my hugest supports postpartum was my network of mom friends who had been through it themselves or were going through it with me. The sleep deprivation, the breastfeeding challenges, the baby blues, you name it.
Agree. The support of a community that you know and trust and has been through the challenges of postpartum or is going through it with you is so important.
That's why we created the Nesting Community. I'm so excited to launch this community. Alicia, why don't you tell our listeners what it's all about?
I would love to. We're teaming up with Dr. Pipp from Making Mama Well to build the Nesting Community to help you prepare for the fourth trimester and beyond. Are you wanting more information on how to prepare? Feeling anxious about all the different options and what to choose? Are you looking for a group of like-minded mamas for support and to lean on each other during this challenging but amazing season of your life?
We'll be having monthly guest experts covering topics from baby wearing to breastfeeding challenges, from postpartum contraception to traveling with your baby. Yes, this pandemic will end.
So come on over and join us at www.shefoundhealth.ca. If you sign up before June 14th, 2021, you can get 15% off the regular price of $27 per month as long as you remain a member. We're lucky enough that Dr. Pipp and her husband are going to do a chat for us June 19th about how partners can support us in this transition and what challenges they might face.
See you in the Nesting Community. Check out the link in our show notes below.
So how do you, because we are huge fans of preparing for postpartum and we talk about that a ton in our prenatal class and in a lot of our podcasts, and how do you recommend people kind of preparing for postpartum? What do you say to people?
So I think one of the most important things is to talk to other mothers, and it's not just talk to them about what stroller they thought was best or what bottles they use or what diaper brand they like. You really talk to other mothers. You need to find a few moms that you can be really vulnerable with and really open with, and take the time to ask them. And I think I said this the last time we chatted, to take the time to ask them what they really loved about transitioning to motherhood and what they found really hard and what they found really unexpected, and ask them to be honest if they're comfortable, if you have that sort of connection with them. Just get them to share those moments where they thought, wow, I really wish someone had prepared me for this. And ask them, what helped in those moments, or what would have helped? What would they have liked to have had available to them if they'd had the preparation? We can learn a lot from our mama village. And like you said, we're so displaced from our mom village, and COVID certainly hasn't helped that by any means, but in these trying times, finding your mama village virtually, having a small group of friends you can text or have a WhatsApp chat going with, so you can have some reassurance and validation of what your feelings are and get some tips from experienced mothers who've gone ahead. So that'd be the first place, certainly, to start. And then the other one I always recommend, as I mentioned, is just plan to rest. Don't set any big goals. Just plan to rest. If you have circumstances that allow you to plan for someone to be home with you, whether it's your partner, mom, mother-in-law, someone who can be there to really make sure that someone is taking care of mom. Your job as new mom is to take care of baby, but someone really needs to be taking care of new mama as well, making sure that she's getting rest, uninterrupted naps during the day, and just being there to support through those hard moments, those tearful moments, hold hands when things feel overwhelming, when the tea is too cold, and, just have someone who can be there for you. Because it's, being home alone with a newborn in the first 2 weeks while you're physically recovering from birth is a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. And I think the other thing that you really want to talk about is that it's really normal to feel totally overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Totally overwhelmed. You have no idea what you're doing. Very normal.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that there's a little bit of a myth that the maternal instinct just kicks in. I think, any instinct is honed with time. It's honed with experience and exposure. So while we all may have varying degrees of maternal instinct built into us, or that we've learned from the mothers who've come before us, some of it just has to come with time and exposure. And unfortunately, some of that has to come from surviving the hard stuff with your baby. It comes from dealing with the colicky nights where you don't sleep and finally figuring out what settles your baby. Sometimes you just have to process those hard moments of parenthood and childhood, get out the other side and think, wow, I can do this. I have a maternal instinct. So it just takes time. And with that, also, the other thing I wanted to talk about was bonding with a newborn. That takes time. This, thought that you can meet this brand new human, have them thrust onto your chest at birth and feel instantly in love. While I do appreciate happens to some people, it doesn't happen to everyone, and that's normal. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Bonding takes time. Bonding comes from caregiving. It comes from experience and exposure. So, if you didn't feel that instant bond or instant connection, please don't be sitting at home alone worrying about that. Most of the time it just comes with some exposure and some experience.
For sure. Yeah. So true. Hey, we started doing a bunch of birth stories because we truly believe that we learn from those who have come before. And I've started asking the questions that you and Dr. Sarah chatted about, right? What was your favorite moment about kind of that transition, and what was the most challenging, and how did you manage it? Or do you have any tips for people going through that? What would you, if you were to do it again, what were you to do? I think almost everybody has said, prepare for the postpartum and prepare for newborn sleep. Those two things are just there is not enough preparation in our society for what newborn sleep looks like, right? Because it's fragmented. Yeah. They sleep like an hour and a half every 3 to 4 hours. And there's and that's just what they do. And that's just how they are. And we can't do anything to change that. We have to adjust ourselves, but create a good plan so that we can be supported through that, right?
I think that also comes into my next point about managing and preparing your relationship for this transition, because the sleep component is really important. I think it's important before baby arrives that the parents have a really candid conversation about how they're going to manage sleep. In some relationships, it's not uncommon for the non-birthing partner to have the perspective that, well, they're going to work in the morning, so they're going to sleep in the guest room so that they can get a good night's rest, while mom sleeps with baby and deals with all the night wakenings because she's going to be home all day. I don't want to vent, but that gets my goat, because no one will be as tired as the woman or the person, the individual who is home with a newborn. It's exhausting, and like you said, they sleep an hour and a half chunks all day and all night. It's tiring. So even if one member of the family is leaving the home to go to work at a workplace for 8 hours a day, I'm sure there's probably individual circumstances that vary the situation. There does need to be some sort of relief situation happening so that the birthing person or the primary maternal person is getting some rest at nighttime, because their relationship will suffer if they're both unhappy. It's a recipe for postpartum anxiety and depression. You can't care for yourself and for your baby well when you're exhausted. So there does really need to be some kind of setup within the couple to support adequate sleep. And I recognize that in some families, it's truly not an option, because some families have a partner who flies out to camp, or their military spouse, and those sorts of circumstances make it even more challenging. And if that is your circumstance, I would even more strongly implore you to have someone available in your home to support you when you've got a newborn, in the early days especially. And like you said, just doing some reading around newborn sleep and preparing yourself for what it's going to look like. You will definitely get asked, is your baby sleeping through the night yet, at approximately 4 days postpartum, and it will be very irritating to you. So just know those people are asking because they care about you, and they are not well informed about newborn sleep. We don't expect newborns to sleep through the night until quite a while into their newborn life.
6 months.
Yeah.
4 to 6 months at the earliest.
Yeah, we've just hit it now with mine, and he wakes up at 4:30 still. So
yeah. Well, my 6-year-old comes down at about 2:30 or 3:30 and crawls into bed. So I don't know. She was a great sleeper right off the bat, but she's well trained from the NICU stay. Yeah. So I often talk about parents, and we do, Sarah and I do that as well. I'm about kind of like preparing, having a sleep plan going into it. And one of the things and again, there are always solutions. So like you can feed your baby at 8 p.m., put earplugs in, put a sleep mask in. Your partner can snuggle your baby and watch a movie for 3 hours. You go get at least 3 hours of consolidated sleep, and then your partner can come get you and then go to sleep, and maybe take the baby for a couple hours in the morning before going to work, right? So that they can get 5 or 6 hours of uninterrupted sleep. And then during the weekends, you guys can alternate kind of who gets a little bit of sleep, right? Or there's also, and I always forget this, but there's postpartum doulas. You can hire a postpartum doula to come in even a couple of times a week and care for your baby overnight, bring you the baby to feed, and then manage your baby. So if you do have a partner who's away and you're desperate for some support and you don't have anybody else, that's another option. Or they can come and they can make you meals, they can do your laundry, and they can tidy up around the house so that you don't have to worry about those things if you don't have that support in town. Because that's huge.
That is huge. And then, if someone is taking care of those things for you, then you're not going through the gambit in your mind every time the baby is sleeping of like, well, okay, is the baby going to sleep for 15 minutes, 45 or 90? Do I have time to shower, pee, eat, vacuum, and do the laundry? Which one of those things do I do first? I've spent too much time thinking about this, and now the baby's awake again. So if you've got someone who can take, and this is the other thing I always recommend, is try and have as many tasks off of your plate as possible, so that when you're in those moments of what do I do first to look after myself, you don't have to think about walking the dog. You don't have to think about doing the laundry or preparing meals. The only thing you have to think about is, do I sleep? Do I eat? Do I pee? Or do I shower? Because you don't have to think about all the other things, because you've got a system in place to look after those other tasks, so that, you can just focus on being a new mama to your baby.
Yeah, we talk about creating your postpartum support plan. So one of them is sleep. One of them is your friend who checks in with you, your close friend who checks in with you every day, right? Via a text or a quick phone call or whatever it is, just to kind of just so they're there. But the other thing is that logistical support, right? So who in your family likes to cook? Great. Get them to cook and drop some food off for you a few times a week. Who in your family likes to fold laundry? There's always somebody who likes to fold laundry. Get them to pick up your laundry and do your laundry and drop it off for you. Who likes to mow a lawn, or is who willing to do your gardening? And set those supports up before you actually... Yeah, right? Who you can pay, or a 7-year-old, maybe not a 7-year-old, $5 an hour, right? Who can you set up before you have your baby with very explicit roles that you just afterwards say, thank you for agreeing to this. This is the help I need. Off you go. Right. And then it's off your plate, at least for those first few weeks while you're adjusting to life as a new family.
Yeah. And I think that, those sorts of asks can feel really hard, again, coming from the perspective of never being in a position to have had to ask for help before. Lining up people to take care of you feels like a burden. It feels like an inconvenience. It feels awkward. It makes us feel vulnerable. But people will do those things for you. And then when it's your turn to pay it forward to the next person, you will remember how much that mattered. It will make you a better friend. It will make you a better person. You will notice those little gaps the next time someone is having a new baby, or someone's recovering from surgery, or someone's just lost a loved one. You will remember, oh yeah, that friend who set up a meal train for me when my baby came, or that kid down the road who mowed our lawn. You will remember those things, and you will pay it forward to the next person. So appreciate those people who come in to take care of you. And for the most part, we all love being asked to lend a hand. We all love feeling needed. We all love being able to take care of someone in our lives. So if you need the help, ask for it, set it up in advance.
Yeah. And most people want to help. They just don't know how to help. So if you give them a task, they're happy to do it, especially if it's in their wheelhouse. Some people who haven't had children before don't get it. And so that might be a bit more of a challenging one. But certainly anybody who has children, if you really need help, just ask. They will jump at the chance to help you because they know what it's like and they know how challenging it can be at times.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I've heard that can be helpful to get you what you need is quite often you'll have people call and say, how can I help? Or they'll text, how can I help? How can I help you? You have a new baby. How can I help? And that can feel like a big question when you've just been discharged from the hospital. Like, I don't even know how I can be helped. And it can feel like you're inconveniencing them. So have 3 things prepared. So if someone says, how can I help? Give them 3 options and let them choose the one that's most convenient to them, because then, they're getting something out of it that's a little bit more convenient to them. You're getting something out of it because you needed that thing done anyway. So how can I help? I need bread. Could you pick up some Tylenol from the pharmacy? Or would you mind picking up my kid and taking them to the playground? 3 things, and they will let them pick whatever is easiest for them. And then it's good for both.
So good. Hey. Awesome. Is there any other last tips or pearls that you would like to talk about?
I think the only other note I had here, we sort of touched on it at the beginning, was just mom guilt is very common. We all have feelings of mom guilt, and this comes because being a mom or a parent has a lot of big decisions, and those decisions often mean you're weighing priorities that impact yourself versus priorities that impact your child. So baby's needs versus mama's needs, or versus the family's needs. And sometimes we have to choose baby, and sometimes we have to choose ourselves, and that may be in these really big decisions, sleep. Do I sleep train? Do I not? Sometimes you're picking the need of the baby. Sometimes you're picking the need of the family. And that's okay. As long as the decision you're making is safe, that's okay to sometimes put your needs ahead of baby. And it's normal to feel guilty, but try your best to just let it go. Mom guilt is very pervasive. You can look it up online. Everyone's talking about mom guilt, but guilt can be dangerous. Guilt can lead to shame, and shame can lead to isolation. So when you're in those tricky decision points and you're trying to figure out, do I prioritize baby's needs or do I prioritize my own? If in this moment, what you really need is some support in getting baby to sleep through the night when it's developmentally appropriate, and truly you need that for yourself, for your mental health, for your family, don't feel guilty about looking for some evidence-based support, some healthy support in making that decision. Same thing with breastfeeding. If breastfeeding is not working for you and you really feel you need to switch to formula, don't feel guilty about making that switch because it feels like you're prioritizing your needs. Because again, at the end of the day, a healthy mom is a healthy baby. Every baby deserves a healthy, happy mama, and every mama deserves a healthy, happy postpartum. And sometimes that means making big decisions that feel sticky, and that's okay.
It's like when you fly in an airplane, you put your mask on first, and then you put the mask on your child. Because if you don't get your oxygen, you're useless to everybody else.
Yeah.
So you need to take care of yourself so you can do a better job of taking care of your family. And I have that conversation daily with parents. Mostly moms. I know that's very generalized, but every day. I have that conversation daily with myself, as I'm sure you do as well.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
All the times.
Practice what we preach. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Hey, thank you, Dr. Pipp. You are amazing. Where can people find you?
So I'm just getting back to work in a couple of weeks after being on maternity leave with my second. So I have got a little bit of a social media platform going, which is Making Mama Well. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I have got a website as well under the same handle. It's very basic at the moment, but there are plans for it in the coming future once I am back to work full time. And in the future, I'm hoping to have some self-guided resources for women and their families to download and access, kind of walking through some of this stuff. And I'm happy to chat more on any other topics that any of your listeners are feeling they need to hear about.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, if you guys have ideas, shoot us an email, shefoundhealth@gmail.com.
Thanks for having me. I love your content as well. I send people your way all the time.
Yay, as we do yours. Awesome. Well, we will hopefully chat soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out our website at www.shefoundhealth.ca and to sign up for our community for weekly bump blasts. Make sure to check us out on Instagram or Facebook at she.foundhealth. found.motherhood and head on over to your favorite podcast app and leave a review and a 5-star rating. If you enjoyed this podcast, take a pic of yourself listening to it and share it on social. Make sure to tag us on it so we know to keep making them.